Hey, how's it going? So, if you were growing up in the 70s and 80s, you probably remember the Love Boat. And one of my friends on here is rewatching it. And it's funny because she posted about that this morning, and it got me thinking about my memories of the Love Boat. I'm touching myself up while I talk on here, and so my memory is that I used to babysit. I was in high school in the early 80s, and I used to babysit on Saturday nights when the love often. And I have a good friend of mine who I'm still friends with now. Over, let's see, when did over 45 years we've been friends, and he would call me, and I would be babysitting, and the kids would be in bed already, usually, of course, before 9 o'clock, and the Love Boat would be from 9 to 10, and Fantasy Island would be from 10 to 11, and this friend of mine would call me. Well, maybe I would call him. Sometimes we just call each other. And that part doesn't matter. But the main thing is that we would gossip while the Love Boat and Fantasy Island were on. Sometimes we'd be on the phone. He'd be at his house watching it. I'd be babysitting, and it was nice because I could, when you're growing up and your parents are watching the TV, they're watching what they want, right? And you've got your parents there. But when you're at somebody else's house, especially when you're babysitting, you're in control of the TV channels, and you could be watching and gossip. Okay, we would gossip about the clothes. We would gossip about who's going to end up with who, who was kind of a jerk, or who was funny, or who was who was going to be who's gonna fall in love, all kinds of things. But a lot of times we were, talking about there would be often a musical act with like Charo or somebody. There were so many cheesy things about the Love Boat and Fantasy Island. And, of course I'd say, if I go check on the kids, I'd be like, oh, well, let me call you back in 5 minutes. I'm going to go check on the kids or whatever. But we gossip about like, oh, can you believe, they're wearing this or that. And we'd have like, especially when they had old movie stars on, because the one thing about growing up when we did was there was still a lot of old Hollywood that was aging and that were in TV things. Everyone from Groucho Marx to sometimes, Betty Davis, and they would be mixing with on TV shows with a lot of the Doris Day, let's see, Rock Hudson was on Dynasty, but there was a lot of people from that era, those eras, that were on a lot of these different shows that would make appearances, right? And so, and they would mix with the regular, with the people who were the current stars as well as up and coming stars. So sometimes there would be somebody who was up and coming on a new sitcom that was really popular, or somebody who was new and hip and exciting. They're on their way up, right? And sometimes there were stars that were kind of like on their way down would be on. So it reminds me sort of like something like now, like maybe like The Masked Singer, where sometimes you might have a star that's rising, and then somebody who kind of needs a pick me up in their career would be on a show like that. And but those shows were good because there was still a plot line. But those plot lines, sometimes when you look back now, they're pretty scandalous for our era. They were so hip and happening, and but there were some storylines that were pretty shocking. Like I recently watched one episode where there was this woman who was trying to get back with her ex, but meanwhile you see her in the doctor's Okay, the doctor's supposed to be this player. You see her in his stateroom and they're getting dressed. But she's still talking about how she wants to get back with her ex, who's also on the ship with somebody else already. And it was like, it was obvious that her and the doctor had been together, yet she's talking about her ex. And if you watch it, like for me watching it as a teenager, there were things that I watched that, like, if I watched that scene, I just would have thought, oh, they're just talking about how she wants to get back with her ex. But now watching it as a nearly 60-year-old, I'm watching it going, oh my God, she wants to be with her ex, but she's still hooked up with the doctor. And it's like, whoa, it's a lot of little things that are scandalous and things that you wouldn't even pick up. So anyway, it's kind of interesting to it's like a time capsule of that era, those shows, and especially the clothes. Some styles have come back. A lot of those late 70s, early 80s, what we now call boho, that was like, kind of like one of the trends that was happening. And we would talk about, somebody had what's called a handkerchief hand, or it looked like it was a inverted handkerchief with the V's all around it. And a lot of the drop waist with the belts, but a little spaghetti strap, lots of little sundresses, lots of cute things. The hairstyles also, definitely, for women have come back. The guys have, some of these feathered back styles you see on some guys have brought it back, but there's a lot of people who, never going to go back. But it's kind of interesting to see what's come back, what hasn't come back, what, how we feel about cruise ships, how we feel about travel. Same thing with Fantasy Island. It was a lot. That show could get dark sometimes, because they, Mr. Work, sometimes they give him like superpowers and different things that would happen, and or sometimes the island had a lot of mystery, but it definitely made you want to travel, and it made you want to, and kind of explore. So both those, one would be about cruising, the other one was about going to islands. And I always loved the tiki style and a lot of the Polynesian, I'd say Polynesian glamour type from those eras. So the Fantasy Island had a lot of that. So anyway, what are some of your memories of the Love Boat and Fantasy Island? If you have them, share with me, comment below, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks. Bye.